here's your host, John, with more classic movie reviews.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to snarkymoviereviews.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All I ask is that you jump over to iTunes and give me a review. Today's movie is a film noir classic, Ace in the Hole, 1951. It is also known as The Big Carnival. Kirk Douglas played a down-and-out newspaper man willing to do anything to get a big story. There are plenty of other corrupt people and a femme fatale as well. Kirk Douglas played the down-and-out newspaper man, Chuck Tatum. Douglas was first covered in Episode 4, In Harm's Way, 1965. Ray Teal was cast in the role of Crooked Sheriff Gus Kretzer. Teal was covered in Episode 60, The Command, 1954. Jan Sterling played Lorraine Minosa, the ne'er-do-well wife of the cave explorer. Sterling was born in 1921 in New York City.
I'm walking here!
Raised mostly abroad, Jan enrolled in drama school in London. By 17, the stick-thin actress was dominating Broadway, playing English women. This continued for 11 years. In 1948, the pouting blonde had her first credited role in Johnny Belinda, 1948, with Jane Wyman. A large number of her roles were as cheap hussies in movies like Caged, 1950, Ace in the Hole, 1951, Flesh and Fury, 1952, The Human Jungle, 1954, and Female on the Beach, 1955. Her softer side was seen in movies like The High and the Mighty, 1954. After the death of her second husband in 1959, Jan did fewer movies. She focused more on stage and television. She dabbled in film until her retirement. After 2 decades without working, Jan died on March 26, 2004. Porter Hall played the role of newspaper editor Jacob Q. Boot. Hall did not make his first movie until he was 43. He went on to have a great career as a character actor playing generally unpleasant people. His movies include Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, 1939, His Girl Friday, 1940, Double Indemnity, 1944, Going My Way, 1944, and Miracle on 34th Street, 1947. He continued to work until his death in 1953. Richard Benedict played Leo Minosa, the man in the cave. Benedict was born in Sicily and was a boxer before he headed to Hollywood. His build made him a natural to play tough street guys. His film list, mostly minor roles, reads like a film noir primer. State Penitentiary, 1950. Destination Big House, 1950. Scene of the Crime, 1949. Streets of San Francisco, 1949. Homicide, 1949. Smart Girls Don't Talk, 1948. And Crossfire, 1947, to mention a few. Iron Eyes Cody played the uncredited role of the Indian copy boy in Albuquerque. Cody is the Native American that cried the one-eye tear on the 1970s PSAs about pollution.
Story.
Chuck Tatum, Kirk Douglas, rolls into Albuquerque, New Mexico, in a car being towed by a tow truck. He casually rides in the broken car. In front of the local newspaper, he has the tow truck operator stop so he can go inside. He walks in and passes a young Native American, Iron Eyes Cody, and says, "How?" To which the man replies, "Good afternoon, sir." Tatum looks the place over before he makes his way to see the editor and owner, Jacob Q. Boot, Porter Hall. Tatum is selling right away, but Boot isn't buying. Tatum is a good newspaper man, but he has lost jobs for drinking, contempt of authority, and having an affair with an editor's wife.
I've only one chance to get back where I belong. To land a job on a small-town paper like yours and wait and hope and pray for something big to break. Something I can latch onto. Something the wire services will gobble up and yell for more. Just one good beat, a Tatum special, and they'll roll out the red carpet. Because when they need you, they forgive and forget. But until then, Mr. Booth, you'll get yourself the best newspaper man you ever had. At 40 per, when do I start?
Don't push.
I hope I haven't scared you off.
Well, I don't know. I'm not afraid of a libel suit because I'm a lawyer myself. Check and double check every word I print.
Sure, belt and suspenders.
Now, about that publisher's wife, I think you should know Mrs. Boot is a grandmother 3 times. If you want to start something with her, she'd be very flattered.
Boot finally decides to give him a chance, but doesn't want any nonsense out of Tatum. Tatum only plans to stay until he can make it back to the big time in New York or Chicago. A year later, Tatum is still working at the small local newspaper. Boot sends Tatum and photographer Herbie Cook, Robert Arthur, to Los Brios to cover the rattlesnake roundup. This event is also a kind of a local political event. On the way, they stop at a desert tourist stop/gas station, Minosa's trading post, but can't find anyone around. Herbie sees a praying woman in one of the rooms. A police car pulls into the cliff dwelling area. On the way down the road, they find out from Lorraine Minosa, Jan Sterling, that her husband, Leo Minosa, Richard Benedict, has been crawling around in old tunnels behind some cliff dwellings to find Indian artifacts that he can sell to tourists, and a cave-in has trapped him in the tunnel.
Oh, I thought you were the doctor.
What's the matter? Somebody hurt?
We don't know yet. He's way in there under that mountain.
What happened?
We had a cave-in this morning.
Oh, that's so.
Dumb cluck. Everybody keeps telling him, stay out of that place, stay out of there. Not Leo. Stubborn like a mule. He always keeps going back digging for those Indian pots.
Well, who's Leo?
My husband.
On the way down, Lorraine complains about her life in the wilderness. Leo's father is planning on taking his son some food and coffee, but a deputy stops him. The deputy asks some local Indians to go in, but they refuse, saying the mountain is a holy place and is known as the Mountain of the Seven Vultures. Tatum tells the deputy to stop running his mouth and that he will go into the cave with the supplies. Tatum takes a flashlight from the deputy, and when the deputy starts to react, Tatum smacks him in the chest. The father blesses Tatum for being so brave, while Lorraine mocks her husband. Sensing a big story, Tatum crawls into the cave and interviews the trapped man. In this act, he begins his control of the whole event. Tatum and Herbie follow the rope deeper into the cave. As they go in, Tatum mentions Floyd Collins in the 1925 story. I will cover that story at the end. Just remember, free Floyd Collins. When the squeeze gets tight, Tatum goes on alone. He takes the camera and flash bulbs with him. The roof is shifting and sand and stone keep falling. He finds Leo but can only see him through a small hole. Leo is trapped under logs and rock. Chuck tries to calm Leo, and Leo shows him a pot that he has looted. Leo talks about the Indian ghost not wanting him to take the pot. Chuck takes a picture of Leo. Leo talks about his time in World War II and being scared. On the way out, Tatum says his story may be bigger than Floyd Collins and King Tut. Outside, Leo's father is worried, but Lorraine could care less. They head back to the trading post, and Tatum starts making calls, and he sees the sheriff is running for re-election. Tatum calls the newspaper first and explains the story. Tatum plays up the angle of the devoted wife, superstition about Indians' curses, and the simple, loving parents. He sends Herbie back with the photographs. Lorraine looks at Tatum as her ticket out as she takes a big bite of an apple. In the morning, while her husband is still trapped, she comes down dressed and packed, ready to leave for the big city. Lorraine talks about how good-looking Leo was in his uniform. She says she is leaving and she has left before. She goes to the bus stop, which is right in front of the trading post. A family towing a trailer stops by and says they heard in the paper that a man was trapped. Tatum convinces Lorraine that there is money to be made with the tourists coming to visit. She decides to stay. When Herbie comes back, the trading post is hopping and the price has gone up. Tatum goes into the cave with the doctor. The mining crew arrives and begins pumping air. Herbie is getting excited about the publicity he is getting for his photos, too. Sheriff Kretzer, Ray Teal, comes to see Tatum, and he has a rattlesnake in a box on his table.
How about my right arm? You'd like that. You would too, wouldn't you?
Well, you're that Tatum guy that was popping off over the phone last night.
Not popping off, Sheriff, just threatening. You play along with me and I'll have you reelected. If you don't, and I'll crucify you. That's all I said, remember?
I think I'll have my boys take you to the county line and throw you out.
They have an argument about Tatum strong-arming the deputy. Tatum says this is an ace in the hole. Tatum says he will give the sheriff great press if he plays along. Tatum finds out that the mining crew will only take 16 hours to reach Leo by using wooden shoring as they go. The sheriff forces them to drill down from the top, drag the job out for 6 or 7 days. He tells the contractor that he will lose all county projects if he doesn't play along. The deal between Tatum and the sheriff is that Tatum is allowed to control all the press and the sheriff will get enough attention to get reelected. Lorraine is raking in the money. She comes into Tatum's room and says the 7-day scheme will make her $1,000. She keeps smiling and Tatum says to knock it off. When she says make me, he double slaps her.
Look, Mrs. Mendoza, your husband's stuck under a mountain. You're worried sick. That's the way the story goes. I get the smile off your face.
It's been a nice day, Chuck. I feel like smiling.
You heard me. Get it off.
Make me.
That's more like it.
The drilling starts, and the thumping will have a bad effect on Leo later, and it's kind of like a Chinese water torture. An entire village of tourists is in front of the cliff dwelling. Tatum keeps making daily visits to Leo, and Lorraine has a large stack of money. Tatum finally says he isn't sending any more copy to his editor to see if he can start a bidding war. The sheriff is keeping all of the other reporters in a tent. Tatum is being interviewed, and a man starts telling them that they should have used shoring to get him out. Tatum deflects the man. Leo is looking pretty bad as he stares up at the sound of the drilling. The sound is driving Leo insane.
What's the matter? Did you eat anything?
I'm not hungry.
Take your pills?
Yeah.
This afternoon when the doctor comes, you better give yourself another injection.
I don't want the injection. It's that drill.
You gotta keep telling yourself, Leo, they're getting closer all the time.
I can't stand it. It never stops. It's like somebody was driving crooked nails through my head. Listen to it. It's enough to wake up the dead, I tell you.
Leo tells Tatum that he is his best friend. Tatum feels like a human being for a minute. Leo says that Friday is his 5-year anniversary with Lorraine. She is upstairs arranging for a carnival to come to the property. Tatum is disgusted with himself, Lorraine, and all the gawkers. When Tatum gets to his room, Boot is waiting for him. Boot knows what Leo has done and is not happy about it. Tatum tells Boot that he has quit the newspaper. When Herbie comes in, Boot tells him to come back. The phone keeps ringing until finally New York calls. Tatum says that the story has 4 more days. He asks for $1,000 a day and his old job back. The area is more of a circus now, and they even have bands with songs about Leo. They have a special train running to bring people out. Tatum begins sending exclusive copy to New York. He sees Lorraine talking to some of the other reporters. She negotiates a 3-part story for $750. She says she is heading for New York and looking forward to seeing Tatum in New York. He grabs her by the hair, and this may be the start of their relationship. Leo is getting sick and probably has pneumonia. Leo begins asking for a priest. The doctor says he has only 12 hours to live and the drill is 24 hours away. Leo knows he is dying and Tatum begs him to hang on. The sheriff is in the hotel room playing with his pet rattlesnake. The sheriff is planning a speech after Leo is rescued, but stops when he sees that Tatum has sent a wire saying Leo will be out in the morning. Tatum now wants to use the shoring method. The sheriff says they will have a lot of explaining to do if they change the way they are doing the rescue. Tatum and the sheriff get into a fight and he hits the sheriff and he doesn't get shot. The chief of the mining crew comes in and tells them that shoring won't work now as the drilling has made the walls too weak. Tatum takes oxygen to Leo. Leo is hallucinating, but he speaks of the anniversary gift he has for his wife. Tatum tries to will him to live. Tatum goes back to Leo's room and busts in on Lorraine. He digs the gift out of the closet and gives it to Lorraine. She criticizes the gift even before she opens it. Tatum forces her to wear it and chokes her with the fur until she grabs a pair of scissors and stabs him in the side. Tatum drives to an adobe chapel and gets the priest to go back to the cave with him. Leo asks if Lorraine has gotten the present. The priest does the last rites and uses a stick to make the cross on Leo's head. Leo lets go and dies. Tatum rides to the top of the mountain in a lift and stops the drilling. He announces to the crowd that Leo is dead.
Listen to me. Listen! Listen!
Leo Minosa is dead. He died a quarter of an hour ago, with a drill just 10 feet away.
Many in the crowd remove their hats. Some kneel and pray. Tatum says the circus is over. The flood of cars depart as other reporters rush to file their stories. Lorraine grabs her bag and heads for the bus. Tatum goes into his room and finds out that he is fired from the New York job. Tatum calls New York and tells the whole setup and that Leo was murdered by him. They don't believe him, and the New York editor hangs up on him.
Now, Nagel, Tatum, wait a minute. Don't yell at me. Sure, I let you down. I know they're on the street, the other papers. Sure, everybody else got the story, only it's the wrong story. Shut up, I said. Leo Minosa didn't die. He was murdered.
Is that the best you can think of? Stop it, Tatum. You're wasting your breath. Now let me tell you the story behind the story. You got drunk yesterday, you were drunk all night, and you're still drunk. All right, I'm crazy. But it's only because I took a chance on you.
And I'm giving you your money's worth. A Tatum special. Something that'll make all the other papers look sick. Hey, Nagel, you wouldn't be sapping up to hang up on me. Not now. Listen to this. Reporter keeps man buried for 6 days. Now get set for the rest of it. Nagel!
Herbie takes Tatum back to the Albuquerque newspaper. As they leave, Leo's father is standing in the field alone. Tatum goes into the newspaper and tries to tell Boot the story, but collapses before he speaks and possibly dies. Notes: I wanted to take a little time to cover a true story and see if it sounds familiar. In 1925, a man named Floyd Collins was looking for a better entrance to Crystal Cave so he and his family could bring in more paying visitors. He spent 3 weeks exploring what would be later named Sand Cave. On January 30th, he was rushing out of the cave as his light was running out. He knocked his light off his head, and in total darkness, he dislodged a 16-pound rock that pinned his left leg. Since the passage was so narrow, he could not reach the rock. He was found the next day by a friend, but the rock could not be reached from the front side. Collins was trapped just 150 feet from the entrance of the cave. Collins was taken food and given a light that added warmth. Collins survived for over a week, but he was cut off when the passage collapsed in 2 places. The rescuers decided the only way to reach him would be to drill down 55 feet from the top. He was reached on February 17th. However, he was already dead from exposure, probably having died on the 13th. During the entire rescue, a newspaper man, William Burke Skeets Miller from the Louisville Chronicle-Journal, reported from the scene. He was a small man and spent time in the cave and aided in the rescue attempt. Miller won the Pulitzer Prize for his reporting. Radio operators were relaying the story from the cave to the telegraph in Cave City. Curious visitors came, and at one point there were tens of thousands in attendance. This story drew so much attention that it led to the creation of Mammoth Cave National Park, which includes Sand Cave.
Here's the world-famous short summary.
Free Floyd Collins. If you enjoyed this week's show, please tell your friends. And if you really want to help, drop over to iTunes to give me a review. If you want to comment, recommend a movie, or just say hi, follow the links in the show notes to my site. Beware the Moors. I'm ready for my reviews, Mr. DeMille.